The Expansion Zone with Sonia Barrett.
Everybody's talking about consciousness. Everybody wants that eternal kiss. Yeah, everyone's saying there's more than this. Everyone wants to follow their own bliss. Talking about one love, one blood, one life in everyone. One life, give each other. We are sisters and brothers. We sing Om.
On the Expansion Zone, we examine life and our quest to understand who and what we are and of the vastness of human potentials. We explore the making of our world from quantum physics to parapsychology, health, sociology, and philosophy, along with practical living. You are reminded of the possibilities in creating personal change. So for an hour, we'll stimulate and expand the mind.
Shanti, 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 shanti. Sing the world. Let's do it together. Shanti, shanti, shanti. It's time to wake up. Shanti, shanti.
Well, welcome once again to the Expansion Zone with Sonia Barrett. I'm, of course, your host, Sonia Barrett, and also good to join you on another Monday in this 365-day cycle, or so we call it anyway. Another new Monday in the beginning of the year. And if you are on your dial at 90.7 FM, and maybe perhaps you are streaming us live at kpfk.org, that's all great. Great to connect with you, as I said, as always. And let's see what stimulating thoughts and changes may happen today for you, for me, for our guests, simply from the dialogue in today's show. Today is also the day that we are acknowledging and observing the birthday of Dr. Martin Luther King. And with that said, I always have a Monday quote for you, but I am going to read 3 quotes actually from Dr. King, and it's so incredibly relevant. Everything he says generally is quite relevant, but in light of the moment that we are in our world, in our reality, and also based on the conversation that we will be having today with our guest, here's the first quote. We know through painful experience that freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. The second quote, the most courageous act is still to think for yourself. And the third, to find yourself, think for yourself. I'm going to elaborate on these quotes in just a bit. All right, so today's topic, there's so much in the topic that I think this may sum it up, but of course, it could also get way bigger. But the topic is economic power and its history, new changes to the credit reporting system, and its role in economic freedom. So, I say today more than ever, these quotes hold great significance. All right, so again, I'm going to elaborate a little bit more, but our guest is Ade Inniss, founder of Inniss Global Opportunities and an associate of Phoenix Rising Consultants. All right, so in regards to the quotes, as I said, today more than ever, these quotes hold great significance. Now, why is that? Well, because we are alive here and now. This is not something that we are reading about. We are living this moment. This is our time that is being recorded in history. There has always been this constant battle of those who want to take freedom. They want to take freedom from others, while others fight to take back or to maintain their freedom. So what is freedom? I think to some degree, yes, it is relative. And so it is such a loose word to some degree. And that's simply because the rule makers globally tend to establish for the people and define for the people what freedom should look like. What freedom should look like for you, what freedom should look like for me. And this kind of freedom, particularly economic freedom, has always been presented with boundaries. And so people have been conditioned basically to stay in their place or stay in their lane, as they say, particularly those of African descent and those generationally on the lower economic spectrum. That's just the way it's been. Now, I do want to make clear that my statements, however, it's not about hugging a victim mentality, but it really is about penetrating the veils and seeing the opportunities that are there. The opportunities that are there to grab them here and now. So let's see if we can help with that in today's conversation. As of course, you know, the expansion zone is all about freedom. It's about expansion. You can't really get free if you're not expanding. And that includes a whole lot of things. So my guest today, his bio, Ade Inniss is an entrepreneur, a curious mind, and cosmic soul. In 2018, he launched Inniss Global Opportunities, a boutique consulting focused on deal management and facilitation across a wide spectrum of markets. And as I said in the intro as well, he is also an associate of Phoenix Rising Consultants. Adé is a strategic visionary who has developed and led teams focused around capital recruitment efforts for both real and intellectual property ventures. Based in Washington, D.C., Adé's passion for closing the global wealth gap, especially for people of the African diaspora, is fueled by his Guyanese and Bajan heritage. A self-taught musician and producer, he also has a prolific music catalog and enjoys studying cosmology and exploration of quantum reality and photography. Wow, love that. Well, welcome, Adé Inniss, to the Expansion Zone for the first time. Great to have you here.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to come and speak to your group here, to your network.
All right. Yeah, well, our listening audience is definitely going to appreciate all that you have to share with us. And I think I'd love to have you chime in on this because my focus was on freedom. And of course, today being celebrated as Dr. King's birthday, that was everything he was about, was about freedom. So, you know, with the variety of interpretations of freedom for each person, and as the system has constructed, concepts of freedom, what could you apply to that? What would you like to add to that in understanding, maybe what that actually means, and how that has impacted us, maybe psychologically or economically, and then we'll lead into bigger things about, what you're going to educate us on as well.
Well, I would say that freedom is for the most part is a concept that lies beyond the reach of our self-definitions. What I mean by that is that over time, we've definitely become programmed and kind of mired into certain thought processes about who we are, and in turn, how that individual can operate within this larger structure. For instance, if you look at the financial markets, most of the information that's coded in that space, it stands in a certain way apart from the normal stream of thought. So for most of us in the general economy, our thought processes tend to be around, I go to work, I make X amount of money per hour when I go to work, and then I come home. I spend time with my family, hopefully, and I do whatever I do it in the evening, and then I set up to go right back to work again. And most of our time, our very valuable time, is spent between work and more work, essentially. And we make very little based upon what our actual life energy is worth. In contrast to that, you have a whole other side of the economy where people aren't measuring their life in terms of quantifiable, hour per hour, one-to-one value. They're actually able to multiply that, but because they're leveraging the power of other people's money. They're leveraging the power of other markets. They're leveraging the power of stock trades, of ETFs, of bonds, of securities exchanges. And because of that, they're able to maximize their potential of earnings. Now, think about that from the perspective of just what I described. You have essentially a wheel that's created, work to work to work to work to work until you're eventually used out. What if you can get beyond that cycle and actually get to a place where even your sleeping hours, when you're resting, are profitable hours for you? So that creates more opportunity to have time. I remember once a few years ago, I actually was in the company of some billionaire associates of mine. And, we were talking, and I remember one of them said something to me that was really interesting. He looked at me, he said, "Ade, do you think that lawyers and doctors and all these other people that people admire in society are rich?" And I looked at him. I thought it was a pretty straightforward question. I said, "Well, maybe not all of them, but some of them." And he started to laugh. And I found out funny. I was like, "Why are you laughing?" And he said, "Because most of them don't own their own time. As much money as they may seem to have, right? For the most part, most of them do not own their own time." And I just thought that was the most profound statement.
Yes, it is.
Because it got me to thinking about what is the real value of my time. And he went on to elaborate. He said, "Well, think of it this way. A doctor has to come back to look at his patients and spend time with his patients. Even if he has a practice, he still has to call in and do a bunch of stuff to facilitate keeping that operation organized and moving forward, right? And typically, because it's medically oriented, there's a lot of time intensity that's involved in that. Same thing with lawyers, same thing with bankers, same thing with a lot of these other people who are in certain spaces that we admire." He said, "But I, as an investor and entrepreneur, well, I'm in a different situation. I can go take my family for a year and travel around the world," which he actually did later on that year. I called him. I said, "Rick, where are you?" He said, "Oh, I'm in Bali. I'm going to this wedding for the second time. They decided that the first time that they had it yesterday, everybody wasn't here, so they ran it again with all the fireworks and the yachts and all that." I said, "Wow." I said, "So when are you going to be back?" He said, "Well, I'm not sure. We'll probably be back sometime next year." And they did not come back for about a year and a half.
That's what I'm talking about. I'm ready to do that right now.
Aren't we all, right? But the point that was made to me very, very saliently, of course, was that, here was an exact exhibition of what he had talked about, because I don't really know any doctors who can just pull away like that. I don't really know many people who can just pull away and have the ability to own their time without having to worry about, oh, well, if I'm not working, then the lights might go off. Or if I'm not working, then I might not be able to keep my house. If I'm not working, then I may not be able to keep the things that I've accumulated as what I define as my life.
That's another level of slavery.
Right.
Slavery to time. Mm-hmm.
And I think that, it's important for us to begin to realize that the concepts of slavery as a physical bondage have over time shifted, especially when we entered into a debt standard. At one point in time, the American currency, let's use that for an example, was based on a copper standard. Then again, it was based on a silver standard. And then eventually, especially after the Great Depression, when the American government conscripted all the gold, they took that gold and placed it inside of this fortress. They called it they called it Fort Knox, and they were able to manipulate the value of the currency, the value of gold. And what they did is they backed the American dollar on gold, right? And now, at that point in time, of course, slavery of different kinds still existed, but it took a unique turn once they started to value or to back the American currency on a debt concept. Now, once that happened, it essentially threw millions of people into a position of what they call debt slavery or credit slavery to a certain degree, right? Because now there was really no way, because the dollar that you have in your hand actually didn't have any value apart from the credit worthiness of the country itself. So, it put us in a very interesting and long lasting position where right now, in that same wheel that I described, if you really think about it, when we're paying to all these different companies, you pay to your electric bill, you pay to your gas bill, you pay to whomever. You are working for the most part to pay off these companies, right? And essentially not really working to be able to how many of us can really put savings away? How many of us can really, take the opportunity to leverage our capital gains onto markets that allow for us to be able to grow exponentially? So the whole situation has become very challenging, but there are, from what I see that there are ways for us to start lifting ourselves out of that. And one of those in particular is through managing our credit, being able to leverage credit into spaces of gain, spaces such as stocks and so forth.
Before we dive more heavily into that, I just want to point out again to folks, which you have, but I think it's really important that people really recognize, this moment in time and all that is happening, and looking at the economic destruction, basically, that is going on, and to really recognize that, history just repeats itself in different ways. That this is not unusual. It's those who are in economic power. I like to be clear about that when we say those who are in power. Well, it's usually through money, through monetary worthiness then or value that they're able to maintain that kind of power. But that this history is just long standing, this economic barrier. And I'd also like for you to address a little bit too, as to eventually why do these folks fight so hard to keep this divide? I mean, of course, I know why. We know why, but but I think we just need to put it on the table so that people understand by the end of the show as to why. Again, why is it important for you to not be able to play in the bigger economic game? To have the kind of money or value, and why is it so hard to get there? So anyway, so that's what I wanted to throw in.
Well, and I would answer that question by saying that the nature of capitalism itself is dichotic. It's an implicit dichotomy, an implicit dualism that renders, in order for one person or group of people to be rich, that there must be another group or one person who is poor.
Absolutely.
That must be the case. And in order for that to continue as a type of perpetual machine, then the skew between rich and poor has to be dramatic, right? In order to ensure that those who are rich, and of course, if you're rich, you don't want to suddenly say, hey, you know what? I don't want to be rich anymore. I want to be poor. There's very few people who will say that. I don't know if I would say
this $1 trillion is just weighing me down. It's just weird.
It's too much.
Too much.
I need to get rid of it. and now, mind you, there are philanthropists, right? There are, Bill Gates, Melinda Gates, actually, she's been giving away all kinds of money. Those
are probably not people you want to mention, but I hear you.
But my point is, even in their philanthropy, there are tricks of the game, because in giving away money, now they've just attained a huge set of tax credits that they can then write off other profits again.
Exactly.
So as much of philanthropy as it may seem, it may not be as self-giving as it may appear. But that being said, I would say that just by the very nature of the way that this capitalistic system, and I mean, let's be honest, it is the dominant system on the planet. There really is not another dominant functioning system that exists on the planet. So it is the reality that we have, and in that reality, those who have want to make sure that they perpetually have, and in so being, they must make sure that those who have not are perpetually in a position of having not.
Right.
That's why you see credit. That's why you see reduction of credit opportunity. That's why you see this K-shaped recovery that's occurred in the process of our affliction of COVID, and all the different complications that have developed in our communities, in our societies, and our global reality. As that's why you're seeing things split off in the way that they are, because what it's done is it's emphasized the divisions that were already there. Things such as the tax bill that was passed in the U.S. within the first year, I believe, of Trump's presidency, so-called presidency, I'll say. It's all those things have done nothing but agitated, augmented, and helped further split the divide to the point where it's made it even more difficult for us to be able to climb back up on the other side. And those are real challenges that we are going to have to acknowledge individually and collectively, and begin to really focus on what do we do and how do we make these changes, because it's not going to change magically. It's not going to change by itself, right? And these are real things that we are now forced to deal with.
Absolutely. And also, excuse me, with that said, credit has always been that thing right there, particularly for people who are living in maybe impoverishment, or just that middle of the road, or just, day-to-day survival mode. Credit, particularly in our community, has always been an issue. And with the new changes coming, it's going to be an even bigger issue. Now, again, everything I'm saying, this is not about pessimism, but this is really about knowing the knowledge, having the information so that you know how to stay a step ahead. And this is what we're doing today. We're reminding you of history. We're reminding you and telling you about where we are right now, what's going on, and how you can stay steps ahead of what's going to unfold as we move along. So I just wanted to throw that in. So,
and I agree with you.
Yeah.
It's not about being pessimistic. It's about looking reality squarely in the face and recognizing that, as daunting as conditions may seem, that they're not impenetrable. Nothing is built without a solution. It's just upon us to figure out what those solutions are and apply them, so that way we can get to the other side of this mountain. And that has to start today for most of us, if not all of us. That has to start right this moment. We have to start looking directly. Okay, what do I do? How do I do it? And where do I go from here?
Now let's probably take a look at you. Well, it's up to you. We can take a look at what the importance of what credit can afford you, but you can also maybe begin by talking about the changes that are coming with that FICO 10. And it might seem simple, but the significance of that, the effects of the changes that are coming in our credit scoring system based on FICO?
Of course. So in previous times, now I think we all have some awareness of credit scoring and how it operates, some awareness. But I would say the majority of us probably don't know very much about it. Either because of, we haven't taken the time to really focus on it, or because it seems a little complicated, and sometimes we stray away from those things that seem more complicated. It's just as a natural thing that we as humans do. But the case of the matter is this, that in 2020, in December, the credit agencies began to implement a new accounting system, a new scoring system, rather, for your score. Whereas before in the FICO 5, FICO 8 versions, when you had a lending agency, you went to go get a mortgage, or you went to buy a vehicle, or whatever the case may be, those companies had access to a system that allowed them to see what your credit was at that moment. Oh, this is so-and-so, this is great. You have, you have a 720. I can see that you have, multiple trade lines. You have good credit worthiness. We can see that your credit usage is under 30% per month, et cetera. We can see all these different pieces. You haven't been late on any payments. You don't have any delinquencies. Yeah, we'd be happy to allow you to, give you the money to go ahead and buy this vehicle or have this mortgage. But with the introduction of FICO 10, that's begun to change. Because see, when they made those assessments, when they gave Miss So-and-so the ability to buy the vehicle, they were looking at a snapshot of where those components were, where that data was at that moment that they looked. FICO 10 changes that. FICO 10 now gives them the ability to look into a 24-month, 2 years of whether you've been on time for your payments. Do you have any delinquencies? Are you using too much of your credit per month? Are you over the 30% industry standard of credit usage? What is the composition of your credit structure? Do you have do you have personal along with revolving credit lines? And all the other criteria that they would have looked at within that one snapshot of that immediate look from previous systems now has expanded to 2 years, which
it's a long time.
It's a very long time. I mean, I can't tell you all the stuff I've done in 2 years. and especially especially when you start to look into such critical data points that, especially during times of COVID, many of us have fallen behind on bills. Many of us have had challenges where maybe we were a bit late to make a payment. So just think about it from that point forward, just coming out of this moment and, where many of us are still struggling to figure out, well, when the stimulus comes, then I have to pay this bill. Then I have to pay that bill that we're already late. And to be quite frank, there's not going to be a forgiveness by these agencies because, there was coronavirus. We'll give you forgiveness. I doubt that would ever come. Right. But what it does mean in terms of solution is that, yes, it is a critical point of term. It is a critical issue. Right. 2 years is a very long time. But that means that we need to start today and start looking towards how will we fix this over the next 2 years? How are we going to make sure that in 24 months that we are ready and available to take advantage of all the money that the Biden administration is set to pour into the housing market, all the monies that that are available for people who have good credit profiles, and the ways that those monies can be leveraged beyond making an acquisition of something that we want. There's the other side of it where you can then turn and start looking at how do I leverage this credit worthiness? How do I use this credit opportunity to be able to do other things? But once again, it starts with the first step. Go and get that credit rating looked at. I would suggest that there's a great service called Identity IQ. I would go there today And I would sign up for an account and I would start looking directly at, okay, where's my credit at, right? And then from there, you need to contact somebody who you know can help you fix that.
Let's get into that more after this break. I'd like to take a break first because there's quite a few things that you're going to be covering after the break that really will pull it all together, I think, for folks as to the real urgency of credit. If you didn't pay attention to it before and you were just using cash, to really understand on a more profound level as to why this is now necessary. So please stay tuned and we will be right back after this brief break. And we are back. We are coming to you from KPFK 90.7 FM in Southern California and streaming live at kpfk.org. You are, of course, listening to The Expansion Zone with Sonia Barrett, and that is me, your host. And my guest today is Inniss, Ade Inniss. I started his first name first and was going to give his first name last.
They used to call me that, and they used to do that in school all the time. So.
Well, there you go. So then I was okay. I was okay. So, but we're really having a discussion, or he's really sharing or providing information on these new changes that are coming up in terms of the credit reporting system. And anyway, and how it all relates economically, personal economy and collective economy. All right. So do you want to pick up where you left off? You were kind of, I guess, giving folks an idea as to what they need to do first, which is, contacting or logging into, what is it again? Identity IQ?
Identity IQ. I would make that my first stop. And I didn't mention Credit Karma or these other services because they tend to be more for the consumer. And what I mean by that is the information isn't as comprehensive. I know when I decided about a year ago to say, hey, I'm going to really fix my credit. I was looking at doing some things on the market and I was like, wouldn't it be great if I didn't have to try to use my own cash to be able to make moves forward? And I said, well, let me look at my credit. And at the time, my credit wasn't great. I think my credit was a 550 at the time. And I said, well, I need to get this squared away. I need to straighten up my credit. Now is the time to really take a deeper dive into my credit. Now, my credit had been fixed before, right? As many will tell you, it's not hard to get credit up. I think at one point I had an 805 or some number like that. But because I hadn't paid attention and I'd made some mistakes, as we all do, my credit worthiness fell. So I looked at it. I said, well, let me get it going. So I at the time, I'd just been introduced to a company called Phoenix Rising. I didn't know much, apart from the personal referral. And I had an opportunity to speak with the people who were operating that. And they told me, well, look, this is what we need you to do. So I went on, I started up an account with Identity IQ. Then I contacted the associates at Phoenix Rising. They went through it with me. We went step by step, mark by derogatory mark. And as we went through it, I felt very daunted. I felt, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? But they assured me, they said, look, there are rules, there are laws that are set aside for the consumer that are on your side. There are tools that we can use to leverage the ability to be able to clean this off and help you get yourself back onto the right path. And although I was a bit doubtful, I believed and I decided to move forward. And as I did, I would say within about 6 months, I started seeing changes on my credit. And as time has gone forward, my credit has continued to improve. I now am in a position where I can start to leverage some of this credit that I've developed into other spaces where I can begin to earn off of the credit availability. And we can talk about that in a bit. And, I was able to get some trade lines. And for people who don't know what trade lines are, Trade lines essentially are, let's say you have an American Express account with a $10,000 limit. That is a trade line, right? So what people don't realize is that trade lines, because of laws and the way that they're set up, you can leverage other trade lines. You can leverage a third-party trade line. So it's important to have a company who has already done the business of sourcing well-seasoned, underutilized, where the utilization isn't 40 or 30 plus, where they've really kept this trade line under a certain amount so it's valuable to you, so it doesn't reflect poorly on you. But, to get with a company that has already done the work of sourcing other companies, the sourcing third parties who are willing to allow you, the individual, to leverage additional trade lines, because those trade lines will also help you build up your credit worthiness. So, I've gotten some trade lines together. And now I'm in a much brighter position than I was a year ago. Now, understanding that I also started this process before FICO 10 began. Now that FICO 10 has begun, it's even more critical that the relationships that are built are long lasting. You have to have trade line relationships that are going to be able to stay with you for a longer period of time. You're going to have to, have a relationship on your credit history that shows that there's a 24-month pattern, because
stable pattern,
even more important and more critical than it's ever been before. So as time has evolved, I have begun to see how credit is actually the central step in liberating ourselves from the puzzle of imprisonment that we find ourselves in.
And let's add what many folks probably are not thinking about right now is the fact that, so there's mortgage, or being able to get a mortgage or a loan, being able to buy real estate, period. Why is that really important? Because most of the folks who have been in power, a lot of these people got into power by buying up land, by buying up real estate. And, the same thing with the foreign, like China, all these other places, Japan, all these places, these countries that have actually come and invested in the United States in buying land. Buying real estate anywhere is always a huge thing to be able to do that. You can buy an island, you can buy a whole country. I mean, come on, you have to have some kind of financial capability to do that, and then leverage obviously what it is that you've bought. So you've got that, and then you've got employment, because now they're checking credit for people's employment. So
exactly.
So that's going to be also a challenge that people need to look at. It's getting a job. Even if you say, well, I'm just going to do cash. This is going to become significant in a lot of ways. Buying a car, all kinds of little basic things that things we see as basic won't be that basic anymore.
Exactly. And especially as the implementation, the usage of this credit scoring system becomes more and more ubiquitous throughout multiple markets. As you say, getting a job is going to become more difficult because, Johnson, about a year and a half ago, it seems like you were having problems paying your bills. Well, why was that? And you could say, well, COVID, COVID's stupid, but even then, you may find yourself in a challenge because they may just want to look at the paper. Well, the document says that you didn't pay, which means that you're not stable. We only want to hire stable people, which is really backwards if you think about it, because why would I need a new job if I wasn't trying to improve my stability? So, yes, everything from jobs to cars to more vital assets like property. And I remember years ago when I had taken a real estate course, and I remember the first day that the instructor came in, she looked at the class and she took a chalk, and this was a very old school kind of approach, and she wrote and she drew a line on the board, and she wrote over it. She said land, She asked people, well, what is it? And of course, people raised their hand. Some people said, oh, dirt. Another person said, something you walk on. And everybody had a quick chuckle. And she quickly stopped all that. She said, well, what land is everything from the ground, from the surface of the ground to the core of the earth, right? And everything from the surface all the way up into space. That when you own land, that's actually what you own. You own the rights of everything above and below you. And it just was such a profound statement to me. It actually really caused me to rethink and reevaluate the real value of what land is. When they say that land is the only true way of being able to pass on wealth, I think there's a huge piece to that statement that people need to examine. And especially at a time when there's a constriction of credit availability, where there's a constriction of the people who will be, as time moves forward, considered to be credit worthy. And how that plays out in the larger schematic of things, where the ability to buy land is being restricted.
Well, it's a generational effect once again.
Absolutely.
And this is all of the bigger picture that I'm hoping that people get. They have younger kids, younger people, teenagers, or people in, whatever, their kids in their 20s or whatever. They need to have this information, because this is why I would say we are where we are. People are where they are because of this generational effect that may not have happened through technology. They didn't have the technology at one point. Not like this, but obviously it has always been some way that they've had to hold the most gold. Even they say he who holds the most gold holds the power, has the power.
Of course.
This change that we're talking about, it's not small. It is a rippling effect. If we already had a difficult time securing these things, like land once again, and mortgages, being able to buy houses, what will that look like then if the majority of people can't get the credit score to a certain point, or can't maintain 24 months of consistently balanced credit, sustainable credit, and be able to get an apartment in an area that you want to get an apartment in? If there was already challenges, here we go now. So it's going to filter into many different things, and it doesn't have to be a fearful situation. But what it has to be is a wake up moment and a call to action, and not saying, being just victimized, because that does not work. It is about the action. What can you do moving forward? That's the only thing I'm focused on. I'm not focused on so much what they're doing. I just want to know what is being done so that I know what strategies to put in place.
I was looking at some data recently that was, they were saying that the gap now in home ownership, and it's taking Black Americans into question right now, right? The gap of home ownership between Black Americans, white Americans at this point in time is larger today than it was 50 years ago. It increased by 7%. That increased from 40 to 47% within just this past year.
It's crazy.
And when you really think about the trajectory, the where things are moving, it's just, it puts a bigger emphasis on these types of changes in the market. A new credit scoring system that most people don't know about, more than likely you will only find out about if you're not listening to this show, if you're not listening to other people who are talking about this. You will only find out about this when you go to apply for your, with what you believe is your good credit that you've gotten over the past year, whether you fixed that yourself or went through whoever, right? You will probably only find out about this when you go down to the bank to try to sign for that mortgage. Then, we can't give you this because 2 years ago, and you're going to be looking dumbstruck. 2 years ago, I didn't think we were going back. Well, yes, we are going back that far now.
And then there's interest rate.
Right.
Right. There's the interest rate. If you do get whatever it is you're trying to get, now it becomes
the higher interest rate and higher fees to be able to maintain whatever it is that you feel like you've been able to get.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, because then it just becomes this vicious cycle to some degree. You're trying to move ahead, but then you can't keep up. It was like people who got the balloon payments, and then it didn't work for them. They couldn't do it because their income wasn't moving upwards to be able to sustain that. And then over time, people ended up losing their houses and stuff behind some of these. So I think it's looking on and strategizing, which is really what you're saying right now, Ade, is how to better strategize.
Right. Now, I agree.
Yeah.
And once again, and I would just say, just to kind of underline it, whatever strategy people are looking at implementing, it has to begin with credit repair. Has to, because how much cash can you really throw to fill the hole? Not much, especially when that hole is growing at an exponential rate. Credit has to be the first step.
Yeah, and these inquiries, finding out that this is not working, you can't get the car you want, and then you go not really understanding any of this, not knowing any of this. So then now you end up with 10 more, inquiries on your account, and you walk away with no car, or you walk away with a car with a mob kind of interest rate. Right.
A mob kind of interest rate. And probably if it was used, it's probably not going to have even close to the value that you're paying for.
Right.
At all. Especially when you consider the moment that a car drives off the lot, it loses almost 40% of its value.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. That's pretty crazy. Yeah, it's not a long-lasting, growing investment unless you have a classic car or some unique situation. Yeah. But it's really wild, because I can see this spilling over into driver's license. I mean, just watching the progression of things over the years, having come from a time when, I'm dating myself, but coming from a time when I remember working at the store, my job out of high school, or while in high school, Marshall Fields in Chicago. And they had a book that came out once a month or something, that lists the people who may have bounced a check. Okay. So we're talking no technology per se at that time. And then you look at now, and it's been a rapid increase. It is just rapidly moving in a direction of gathering so much data, and a day, that's what it is. It's a lot of data gathering.
And I honestly believe we're just at the beginning of it, to be frank. With the changes in other technology fields. I mean, a further acquisition of artificial intelligence technology into the financial market space, a further acquisition of data collection technologies into various spaces of personal data, financial data, public data. We are at a place right now where very soon, and I mean very soon, there'll be nothing that you do that's not recorded someplace. There'll be nothing. There'll be no step that you take that someone else is not aware of. Mm-hmm. There'll be no breath that you breathe that's not counted.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Well, yeah. Oh yeah. This party's just getting started. Yeah. I have to laugh, and I laugh because I'm not stressed. Why am I not stressed? Because I'm taking steps. That's why. I'm not gonna waste my energy being stressed about it. I'm gonna take action. So with that said, let's talk about how if folks wanted to get a hold of you, and to also let them know that there's going to be a PDF that's going to be available on the expansionzone.com website with some of this information as to how to make this happen. You'll be able to download that PDF. It has a lot of great information on there. But so tell us, how can we connect with you if somebody wants to, reach out to get some of this happening?
Okay, well, at this point, I would say you can reach me through Phoenix Rising at 760-213-3447. I believe you're going to post this, the actual email address, but the email address is info@phoenixrisingconsultants.com.
Okay, perfect. Yes, that'll definitely be there on the site under this interview, because I really want to see people make these kinds of moves right now.
This is not a time to wait. This is not a time to be coy. This is not a time to fall into the stress. You know, the beautiful thing about emotions is that emotions tell us that something is there. You know,
Right.
emotions are part of our sensory network that allow us to be able to interact with our physical environment and energetic environment to let us know that something is there. Once we've identified that something is there that needs to be dealt with, then we must turn those emotions down and begin to engage a process that allows for us to deal with the issues in front of us.
Absolutely.
You know? And we do that through methodical proven steps, and we can arrive at calculated points by which we can begin to determine timelines and begin to look at what are our next steps forward to better develop our strategic plan.
This is incredible. To me, this is actually a beautiful moment in time. Actually, there's on one hand where it might not seem like a beautiful moment in time if we're going to just, soak in the mire of, our feelings. Or we can say, wow, this is an incredible moment, and I'm going to do what I need to do and begin to actually create wealth and the kind of freedom that you want for yourself. It
Absolutely.
is there. It is there. It's just, you can't always get that information because you're not going to hear it on any of the main news sources. They're not talking about FICO 10.
Right.
They just want you to be in fear all day long and comply so that the economic system can continue to be and whatever the narrative is that's being spun or whatever is being done right now. But it's definitely a time of implementing a lot of these strategies. Now you have the opportunity to implement your own strategy and your own personal reality in making this change. So I think it's an exciting moment as well.
And I would definitely agree with that. I would say that if we look throughout history, the times of great transformation have always come at the heels of great upheaval. And right now we are at that place where we feel a sense of upheaval. But if we're able to look through the haze, the thick haze that creates, there are opportunities. There are opportunities for us as individuals. There are opportunities for us as a society. And there are opportunities for us as a global community if we have the vision to take it, if we can see it. That's the most important part. Even with everything that we see going on in the government, what that has the potential to do is it has the potential to, now that we see all the weeds and we see all the snakes and we see all the rats jumping off the ship or trying to jump onto the ship in this case, right? That in that space, there's an opportunity to now address those issues. There's an opportunity for us to say, you know what? We don't want to live like that anymore. That's not who we are. That's not what I want for my family or my children or my children's children. I don't want that. And I want to band together with my fellow community members and make changes, right? Whether that be on a political level or, as we're talking right now, on a financial level. We can start looking at how, okay, I'm going to get my credit together. You get your credit together. Let's get our credit together. Then we can start looking at, okay, well, let's do some collective investment strategies.
Ah, there you go. You go.
How do we get together to collectively start investing in gold, or investing in energy, investing in food, investing in these very vital components that are the underpinnings of the economic market? How do we start looking? Start looking at the Forex market. Look at the foreign, let's look at foreign trade and currency markets, and what can we do there? individually and collectively. Let's start developing groups together where we can start strengthening each other's ability to know what we need to in order to move forward. Those are all the possibilities that exist for us right now in this moment.
Absolutely. Oh, you said that beautifully, because that's exactly what it is. We can't enter into making those moves if we don't have the foundation for it.
Correct.
And this is what it's about. It's not about why can't we, this happen for us. We have to make it happen for ourselves. And this is how we make it happen. Is to move forward in this manner that we're talking about. And you don't have to stay in your lane. Who created the lane for you? It's like, I stay in my place. It's like, who created that for you? And also, this is not about, because I've heard people do that, but this is not about disliking, people because they have money and you don't. Here's the thing. Everybody wants to have money. But if you're so disliking the people with money, then how are you going to even have that kind of money? It's how you manage that money, how you treat that money, and how you just your overall perception and behavior. You have control over that. But it is a change. It's a perception change as well. You don't have
Absolutely.
a lane to stay in. You don't have to stay in any lane anybody created for you. Break out. We have to break out of all of that slavery mindset.
All narratives are just that. They are narratives.
Yes.
They are stories that we tell ourselves, and each one of us has one. And whether that works to our benefit or to our detriment, that is within the details of the story.
Absolutely.
I
have a few seconds.
Oh well, then that's
no. You can wrap it. If you had a thought, I was going to say you could wrap that up real quickly.
Well, then the final thought that I would say is that, this is the opportunity to break out of old narratives and to embrace new realities. This is the opportunity for us to decide our path forward and to become what we desire to become most. This is the time to focus our energies, to find that structure and discipline that will allow us to engage the future that we see for ourselves and to seize upon it. Fix your credit. Get things, get yourself squared away and start looking at what the next steps are.
Sounds great. One more time, the website, whichever thing you're going to give out. Can you?
Sure. The website, the phone number is 760-213-3447. The website is phoenixrisingconsultants.com. I'm sorry, phoenixrisingconsultants.com. And the email address is info@phoenixrisingconsultants.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ade Inniss, for being with us. And we look forward to you coming back again. Thank you to our listening audience. Thanks to our engineer, D'Angelo Jones. Please visit theexpansionzone.com for the archive of this show and so many of the other shows that have been there. Subscribe to the website so that there are things that I want to update you on. You subscribe so that we can send you the newsletter, and a number of things that are coming up. And also to find out more about me, do visit therealsoniabarrett.com. Check out the Facebook page as well, and YouTube, subscribe to my YouTube channel as well. And as always, I like to remind you to live life to its fullest and question everything. Until next time, see you then.